Hi, it's Ray from Pro Shaper Workshop in Charlton, Massachusetts. Yesterday we left off with this panel that we needed a little bit of area value, and then we wanted to do the surface quality. Well, I try to keep the videos a little shorter, but they drag on. So this one here, we took it off and have wheeled it a little bit, which will add a little area, but it's also been smoothed out. So I think I got it now. Uh-oh. I got a problem. What happened? Well, I took it and I put it in the wheel, and I brought the wheel and I put number 2 wheel in, which is a real low crown wheel. And I put this in this arrangement. I call that the curl arrangement. And before I was wheeling mostly across the panel. Now I can wheel entirely with the panel like this, even with that low crown wheel, without the edges of the bottom anvil biting on the panel. When you're in this lower crown, you have a very light radius this way, and it allows you to traverse the whole panel. So 10 minutes of hitting this whole panel like this will even everything out. And you got to keep feeling it with your hand, and you might find some spots, and then you find that spot and you just go over to that spot. And now when you're wheeling, you'll also feel little tiny vibrations, and ultimately when the panel is all done, all those vibrations are gone. So I still felt the little thing over there, so I just chased that out. But these are really insignificant at this point here. So we should have the area value really good. We have to set the arrangement value, which is just bending. And now, because we have the area value where it's supposed to be, it'll arrange the way we want it to be too. So a little bit of just back and forth like this. You can diagonalize it a little bit of angle, and it's very efficient. My wheels, which are tubular, are very lightweight, and allows you to rapidly move them, and you can cover a lot of the surface that way. We'll go on this side. And you can see, because the wheel is polished on the top, it puts that polish on the panel, and we got a nice polish showing here. So the next step is we'll fit it to the buck again, and then we'll cut a blank of metal, and then we'll start that fitting the joint, get that joint fit really nice, and then we'll start tacking it up. So the next step, I think I got it smooth enough here. What you'll find is no matter how fussy you are, you'll always find a spot later on that you missed, somehow you missed. I call that step 4 in my class. Development of a panel will be step 4. It'll be perfecting the panel. You always find something later on. If it's either going to be underdeveloped or overdeveloped. If it's underdeveloped, you put a dolly under there, unless you can put it to the wheel or something, and you slap that out, and you can develop it really easy. If it's overdeveloped, then if it's severely overdeveloped, you have to use a shrinking disc on it. We're probably going to have to use the shrinking disc anyway where the weld is. Generally, when you work your weld out, you might have a little bit of a problem with overdevelopment, and you got to use the shrinking disc on the weld. Now, if you made the next panel, oftentimes these, because I don't have a wire up there I'm landing on, this could be a little overdeveloped here. So when I weld that together, this will have to be wheeled here, and it'll be flowing all together. So let's set the arrangement on that. It's pretty easy. You basically bring it over to a bench. This is the inside edge, that's the outside edge. And because you have the area value the way it wants to be, all you got to do is use your hands as the fulcrum and your belly as the lever. When you slowly roll this thing over, if you go too much, you'll kink it, so you got to take your time with it. Always use a blanket, that'll protect your panel. Got a little solder here we got to get out of the way. So that might not be enough, but let's check it. So we check this curve here. Okay, that looks pretty good. We check the curve on the bottom. The curve on the bottom is a little excessive, so I'll take some of that out. And we should be about where we need to be. The middle might be off a little. Let's see. We want to take any springiness out. There's the spot it goes. Yeah, we're going to give the middle just a little bit more. The end's always been more than the middle. See how that goes. A lot better. Okay. That looks pretty sweet. Now we'll clamp that up. We have these little index marks in the tape. Those are our homes to home that panel in. Laying in on the wire is pretty nice. Homing in on this back wire nicely. And you can see that's a pretty flawless surface. So, like I said though, in the earlier video we did yesterday, this has been wheeled the entire way, and it's a valid way of doing it. But for quickness sake, I would much rather do the shrinks and the stretches. Stretch in the middle, shrink on the edges, and then that's all mallet work. And that happens pretty quickly. And then you just smooth it all out. You'll get the exact same look. You might have a little residue of the shrinks here, whereas this leaves generally a beautiful, beautiful panel. A lot of the English craftsmen I really admire make a lot of their panels this way, that they wheel. It's usually aluminum though, and aluminum moves a little faster. And you'll get just flawless panels that are better than a die stamping operation can do. There's a few people in the world can do that, and it takes patience, it takes a good eye, and it takes good sense of feel, reading the light and everything to get it perfect. And it really doesn't matter in the long run, because these are all going to be scratched up with sandpaper and primed and painted, unless you're having a polished aluminum body, which is a cool thing. So now what we want to do is we'll just measure how big a piece we need here. And this is just going to be a sheared strip of 20 gauge steel, and then we'll offer it up to this edge and see how it reads, and we'll grind accordingly, and then we'll get that joint super tight, and we'll bring over the little MIG welder and the little TIG welder, and we'll tack it all up. I don't know if we'll have time to weld the whole thing and metal finish it, but we'll see what we can do. But I think this is a pretty good example of the power of an English wheel to yield a beautiful panel. So, and this was all done with my YouTube wheel. You can buy the plans for it at my website, proshaper.com. So let me get the filler piece there. We'll get that cut and we'll go from there. All right, I jump sheared a 6-inch by 34-inch strip here. I'm longer on the bottom, longer on the top, longer here. And this is 20 gauge, and I would prefer probably to have this as the dominant line that we copy, because this is a sheared edge. This one here was an eyeball blue line, and after I look at it now, it's off a little bit. It's a little wandering, and but the issue is the wire is here, and I want to be able to clamp this all together right on here to do my tacks. So I've got plenty of extra material here. So I'm going to mark it, and then we'll cut it on that line, and then we'll fit it up. We might have to do a little grinding, and we'll get a good fit up. So first thing we'll do is put an index line. Generally you put it in the middle of where you're going to weld. So that's a little horizontal line here. I got a fine marker, and there's my index line. I'm going to use the same fine marker to develop the cut line here. I will put blue tape on this after so that I can see it much better. Bottom there. So we've got our index. We had to clamp it up. It's pulled in tight. And after I cut it, because this is one thickness removed, oftentimes it's a little fatter in the middle. We might have to grind it a little bit. But we'll release this now and then cut it, mock it with the blue tape, then cut it, and we'll come back. All right, we have the panel all clamped up. We've got the Lincoln 140C MIG welder. I played with a scrap piece and set the settings so that I think that'll work pretty good. And we're going to try to tack it up that way. We'll see how that goes. And then we'll use the TIG to tack down the bottom. Here we go. First tack. Now we got a really good joint. And we set the MIG low. And there's my first tack. And this is all nice and flush. Put another one in. Got a couple there. Very easy. Now normally I do not MIG tack anything. I use the TIG. So this has been quite a while since I last did this. But I know out there a lot of people really rely on their MIG welders. And I just want to contrast the difference between the results you can get with the MIG versus the TIG. We'll move this clamp up a little bit. Nice and flush. I call the MIG the glue gun. It sticks together stuff very easily. Take that clamp off. Move this up a little bit. And we have it clamped, welded now about every 3/4 of an inch or so. That's a very weak weld. That's not holding anything together. It's just tacking it. Now we'll get the TIG set up, and we'll do the lower part of it with the TIG. All right, we got the TIG all set up, and Mark tells us we have actually one in our Amazon store. Very similar, but it's actually only $197. Check that one out. Here we go. Now this one doesn't have a foot pedal. It uses an on-off switch right here. You set your amperage. I've got the amperage set really low. I'm using an 035 welding rod. I've got the ground set here. And I probably could just fuse this with that because it's touching. Give it a shot. Now, I had to use, with 20 gauge, it is a little tricky. Oftentimes the students will burn a hole. So what you do is you put your main flame right on the rod, and that takes most of the heat. It's a little crowded in here. This one you can pulse just by pulsing the on-off switch. Now, there's MIG weld are generally very cold welds. When we do the stitch welds, they'll be a little hotter. There's very little distortion from the MIG because it's sitting on top. It really isn't that strong. This is almost a fusion weld. There's penetration all the way through, and that's a pretty strong little tack right there. You see this one has a heat affected zone, the no heat affected zone on the MIG, which means that it really didn't get the metal that hot. I'm not condemning it, it's fine, it'll work fine. A lot of people absolutely hate MIG. I have welded sheet metal panels together before and planished them and English wheeled them and everything after, and had decent results. Very rarely would I have a crack, but sometimes you can. Remember, we're making this to a standard of no body filler. It's just primer, that's it. As a tacking tool, this is actually a really nice little welder. Really nice. A real important thing is to have your panels flush. You got them nice and flush all the way. I had it clamped really well. I'm going to clamp this up a little better. I'll take a break and I'll clamp that a little better. I got to get a lower chair too. I got a little gap down the bottom here. Somehow it wandered off here. If you get good with a TIG, you can fill literally a ½ inch gap with a TIG on sheet metal. You just keep building it up. Now this is a tough one because you're going to tend to heat this up. Normally I'd put a piece of copper in there, but let's see what happens. I bridge that gap easy. So we're all tacked up now. I'll put one over here too, right where the index mark was. There we go. I'll put another one over here. All right, both of these welders are 110 welders. They'll weld any sheet metal situation with the 110 voltage. They both don't even have the 220 capability, but 110 is fine for them. So we're all tacked up. TIG, MIG. We'll take this off. All right, here's the panel all welded up. Mark can zoom in here. These are the TIGs. These are the MIGs. You can see there's a heat affected zone. It's a tiny heat affected zone for the MIG, but the penetration is there. All the welds with the MIG, they're fully penetrated. The TIG, it's got a little bit more heavier penetration and a wider heat affected zone. If this was gassed welded with an acetylene torch and tacked, the weld zone would be, the heat affected zone would be much wider. Tomorrow, we'll get this all welded, that all welded, metal finished, wheeled in the English wheel, and we'll get it all flowing together nice, and it'll just, boom, fit right on that buck perfectly. So until tomorrow, it's Ray from Pro Shaper Workshop in Charlton, Massachusetts.